Hello, everybody. Hello, welcome to live stream today. There we go. There we go. Awesome. Looks like we're on. Hey, Luke, how you doing?
Doing well, Bill. How am I coming through today?
I can see you okay. Hopefully, everybody in the chat or everybody in the world that's watching this can see you okay. You're about a quarter of an inch tall, so I'm just going to make the screen a bit bigger. There we go. Hello, everybody. So welcome to our live stream today. I'm the company's expert, or Bill, the company's expert. Joined today by Luc Bohunicky, who is a business builder, from Winnipeg, Canada. How you doing, Luc?
Doing well, Bill. How are you doing today? And happy Easter to you and all those who celebrate it and are watching it now.
Yeah, excellent. Likewise. And just, I guess to start, I'd like to remind everyone I have the chat working today. So that means that if you type something into the chat, I shall probably see it, unlike last time, which we had some technical kerfuffles, but that's okay. Also, just some public service announcements. So subscribe to my channel. This is, I have two channels. This is the Company's Expert Live, and I also have my regular one, the Company's Expert. So you can check that out. And also, I want to have a shout out to all the people who have joined my Facebook groups. I have two Facebook groups. One is called Getting Hired or Get Hired. We have over 100 people in that. And the other one is Entrepreneur Success, which is more related to our topic today. We have nearly 100 people, like 85 people or something like that. So that's really great to see. I hope some of those people are joining us today. So our topic today, as the thumbnail suggests, is how to start a business. How to start a business. And I figured this is more for people who are aspiring entrepreneurs. They are perhaps thinking about this, toying with the idea of doing it. Maybe it's been in the back of their mind for a couple of years, and but they haven't quite pulled the trigger on it yet. That's who I envision will be most interested in this. And there's a lot to cover, isn't there, Luc?
It's a big, juicy topic.
It is a big, juicy topic. That's right. There's many different facets of this. You could talk about risk. You could talk about marketing. You could talk about all the emotional and personal traits that go into it. You could talk about the technicalities, the financing, resources. Where would you like to start? What is a logical place to begin to tackle this enormous topic?
Well, I just hope, Bill, that those who are tuning in today, regardless of where you are, what your circumstance is, that you pick up something that at least makes you feel a little bit more confident about tackling your new business or where to start. Because I personally suffer from analysis paralysis, so sometimes just knowing that first step can help. So perhaps maybe start with the topic of risk factor and should you, how do you. That's sort of an interesting place to be. I will suggest that I always felt like there was pressure that you need to start a business, that it's the most just thing to do, especially coming out of school as a young business person. I always had that sense of pressure that I shouldn't go down the traditional 9-to-5 approach, that, the only good way to do it is to go into business for yourself. And I kind of want to kill that myth, because I think that it's great to go into business for yourself, but I think there's nothing wrong if you don't know what you want to do. If you're fumbling for ideas, don't just sit in your basement and wait until the idea comes to you. Go and get a job, go help a company, get out there and talk to potential customers, whether you end up doing a startup right off the bat or you end up getting a job to learn. I think there's nothing better than just doing. So I don't want anyone to feel pressure to come up with an idea spontaneously. But, on the topic of risk, I personally feel like it's a bigger risk to perhaps not try to create your dream job than to take a job that somebody offers you and hope for the best. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you learn by doing, right? And if you've never done anything, you've never seen anything, it's, are you going to have a lot of really practical, specific ideas of what to do? Well, some people might, but most people won't. You kind of these things occur to you as you see opportunities. So yes, so people probably they have the inspiration. They they would like to do it. Somebody says in the chat, hey, good business ideas for Miami, Florida. Miami, Florida. Well, there's a lot going on in Miami. Mr. Steve Q. Something specific that's unique to Miami would probably be to do with the climate, the tourism industry, the economic environment that you guys have down there. The only thing that comes to, well, the big thing that comes to mind when I think Miami is the nightlife and the weather. Those are the two things that I mean, what do you think? What comes to mind, Luc, when you think Miami? Do you think anything specific in terms of like a business idea?
Well, I think of the TV show Dexter and him murdering everybody. But aside from that topic, Steve, I think when you're trying to put together a good idea, at least for me, it's pulling in different types of factors. It's pulling in the factor, okay, we have nice weather. It's pulling in the factor that, okay, maybe we have a good nightlife scene. It's also pulling in the factors of like, what do you know? What are your personal interests? Maybe you have a lot of contacts in the agriculture industry. Maybe you know a lot of farmers. Maybe you know a lot of people that are working in the education industry. So I think it's a combination of understanding like what are some advantages of where you are located? What are some advantages based on your skill set and past experience? What gets you the most excited? I don't think I've ever boiled it down to like one factor. But I think if I was you, I would draw some kind of idea map and see all the things that you think are these factors, what you're good at, what you like, who you know, the advantage of your geography, pull that all together and see what you can do. So if you want to start an ice cream business, it's much more advantageous to do it in Miami than where Bill and I are sitting here in Winnipeg, which has like a 3-month summer.
Actually, yeah, and a cloud of insects descends upon you during that 3-month summer. So it's you do the only respectable thing: you stay in your house. No, so just all joking aside, I mean, most business ideas you can do from practically anywhere. I mean, yes, there's regional stuff you could get into. Different regional things. If you're looking at something specific for a location like Miami or anywhere else, one of the resources that's available to entrepreneurs pretty much universally is the government will have some kind of economic development entity who's like essentially a department of the government that's set up with the specific job of encouraging business to come into that city or that province or state or region, to try and encourage companies to come there, bring jobs, bring economic development, stimulate the economy, that kind of thing. So what you can do is you can just go to Google or go to a search engine of your choice, and then Google in economic development and then your city. So economic development Miami, something like that. It'll take you to this place. And a lot of times they will have all kinds of information available. And one of the key things that they'll have available is an analysis of the local economy. What industries are, like they're ranked by how big they are and how much business and how much is going on there. And if you take a look at that, you may be surprised because a lot of the industries that are booming, where a huge chunk of the economic activity comes from, are usually things behind the scenes that you don't see as you drive around the city. They're things that you would have never noticed if you hadn't been to an industrial park or you've been out of the city, like urban areas, and that's where the real money is being made. So that may help give you some ideas where there's a lot of money changing hands, there's a lot of opportunity, and maybe it's a little bit below the radar. So that would maybe be a good idea to start if you're looking for something, an idea specific to a region. So I just want to throw that out there. We have a couple of comments here. Somebody says novelty ice cream shops, rolled ice creams, surfboards, boogie board rentals, bring back airbrush t-shirt shacks. All right on. Okay, so that's Miami, right? And Miami Vice, right? I mean, if you could find a way to make money off that fashion sense, that would be great. Hey guys, watching from Johannesburg, South Africa, biggest struggle is access to markets and funding to start business. How do you overcome these two obstacles? Okay, Johannesburg, that's a great question. Okay, so the first part is like, I think you mean access to markets, not access to markets and funding. Would you like to speak to funding, Luc? I know you have some recent experience in that.
Sure. Yeah, I was preparing how to answer that question while we were tackling the last one. So that's great there, Jean-Paul. I would suggest two things to that. So, and this might be more to the funding side than the access to markets. I think number one, you should get out and find people in your community that are working to solve the same types of problems, or people that have the same types of problems. Now, I can't speak to your exact area, but from my experience, personally, my story, I've started several different kinds of businesses, usually technology, usually software related. And I feel that in my community, I have personally accessed every type of resource that is available here. So these types of resources might be like your entrepreneurship community group. Usually areas have a single brand that exists to represent the entrepreneurs. And you should find that group. You can find them sometimes on meetup.com. That's what we have in North America. I'm not sure what you have, but find some kind of name of community where entrepreneurs get together, because they will often have the exact same problems as you. Other types of groups would be like the Chamber of Commerce in your area. A Chamber of Commerce is good to ask for advice about where to go and who to talk to. They're also good if you're trying to get started and you want to know where you can find a manufacturer. Like, they have lots of information available because they want to help economic development. So Chamber of Commerce. There's always technology associations, or usually some group that exists to represent any type of new technology. And these groups are basically funded by governments to promote the stuff. If you don't have these groups in your area, by the way, it's a good excuse to create an entrepreneurship group, because you will find people that have the same problems as you, and it will amplify your voice. Often there's specific groups, like if you will find a biotechnology group, you will find an agriculture group, you will find a machine learning group. So I suggest to look for these kinds of groups that might have the same kinds of issues, and they're working to solve these problems for people like you. So that would be my suggestion. In addition, I would also try to find a business that is a low capital intensive startup. So you have startups that are high capital intensive, require lots of money. You have businesses that require low capital intensivity. And I would find one that's low capital intense, because these are easier to get off the ground and you don't rely on these outside sources of funding. So just to give you one quick example, like, lots of businesses can be both high capital intense, low capital intense, just depending on your target. For example, I was talking recently to a startup in the delivery business. So they want to deliver package from point A to point B. If they target consumers like me and you and Bill, then I think it's a high capital intensive business, because you need to spend all the marketing dollars to target every single people. How will people know that you exist to deliver packages? I think it's lower capital intensive if you target business customers and not regular consumers like me and you. If you target a business and you call a construction company and you say, hey, can I help you deliver this package? I think then it becomes a lot less capital intense. So I think it often just depends on how do you set up your business so that it requires the least amount of money to start generating customers. And then you can expand and spend more money later. But I think you should find a way so that you can start selling without needing outside funding, if it's possible.
Yeah, that certainly holds up. Okay, so you're asking about funding. Okay. You're opening a little bit of a can of worms with this one. Okay, here's kind of what I've seen with entrepreneurs. You basically fall into one of two categories. There's what I would refer to as the innovative entrepreneurs. These are ones that are doing tech startups that are, priding themselves on innovation and all this kind of stuff. And for those people, there exists usually certain resources like startup incubators, special government programs that encourage innovation, things like that. Okay, so they have a set of resources that are available to them. If you're not doing that, you're doing the other group, which is what I would call a traditional business. Say you're going into the construction business, you're founding a plumbing company, a drywall company, that kind of stuff. There's not really a lot of innovation. It's not characterized as an innovative company. They have access to other resources. Usually governments are set up so that they have small business loans and things like this that are available for more traditional businesses. Now, I don't have all the data, the stats in my head, but startups in general, it's over 90% failure rate across the board. And this is for innovative companies and for traditional companies. Okay. Traditional ideas and innovative ideas. Okay. It's a very high failure rate. And although there are resources that are available for you through the various levels of government. So you usually, what you see is you have some resources available from the government at a federal level, and then at a regional level, and then at a municipal level. They all have their own programs, their own departments set up. Okay. So if I were you, I would try and discover what is the place that's the federal department for encouraging small business, entrepreneurial type ventures, startup ventures. How do you apply for funding? What do they have available? What's it called? And then do that for the regional level also, because it'll be a different department with a different group of people with different programs. And then at the municipal level, the city level, if you're part of a city, they'll have their own department. Once again, nothing to do, it was completely separate, nothing to do with the federal and the municipal level. So there'll be three levels of government with their own setup, with their own grants, their own loans, their own programs, and their own resources like mentoring and events and things like that. Okay, so you can look there. That would be a good start. But for me personally, I would think long and hard about taking funding in the very early stages because of the fact that 90% of startups fail. What you're going to find is that most people, the only type of financing you'll have available, usually most of the time, is loans, meaning the money that they give you, but you have to pay back. So that even if your startup idea fails, you still have to pay back that money. And that means that you are bearing all the risk. You are leveraging yourself up. Okay. So what I've always encouraged people to do is to not necessarily go out and look for funding, look for financing right off the hop. Instead, put some of that effort into coming up with a business plan or a business model where you minimize the amount of money you need to get started, and you try and get money coming in as quickly as possible. Okay. Keeping in mind that this is just a phase one of your business. Okay. It might not be what you really want to do or exactly the way you really want to do it. It might be a very stripped down, scaled down version of it where maybe you just rely on services and you just do this kind of ancillary thing first. But the idea is that will get customers. It'll get revenue coming in the door as early as possible, and then you can try and self-fund it a bit more. And also what you're going to find is once you have a revenue stream coming in, you have customers who are paying you for your product or service, it will be a lot easier to secure financing from the sources I mentioned, and also just regular banks and other more innovative financing like angel investors and things like that. I see. Okay, so there's a few comments here. Let's see. So Steve Q says, joining the Miami Chamber of Commerce starts at $820 a year. Yeah, that's a lot. I agree with Luke that it is a resource. It is a resource that you can use. However, if it were me personally, I would not join the Chamber of Commerce if you're paying that kind of money for it. What do you say, Luke? What would be kind of the cutoff for you to join that right off the hop?
I wouldn't join it right off the hop. I would see if they have some kind of startup program. So when I joined the chamber at the beginning, I paid a small percent of what regular members paid for the first year as a startup, and they actually provided me with bonus services. So they did extra things to help me meet other members. So I paid a small amount and I got a huge value. So invaluable to go and meet them. You can often go to the events even if you are a non-member. Maybe you pay a few dollars extra. You can still subscribe to the emails and the newsletters so you know when there is a new subsidy program or when there is a new funding option available. You still want to have that open line of communication, I think. And hey, usually a first conversation is free. So I would call up the chamber, I would sit down in person, I would listen to their pitch, I would hear their ideas. Those ideas will be free. If your business is successful, you'll join later. It's a win-win. But I would not spend $800 at the beginning. No, I totally agree.
Yeah, I joined a Chamber of Commerce many years ago, the local Chamber of Commerce we have here in Winnipeg, Canada. And I'm not sure if my experiences were typical, but I found that chambers of commerce, a lot of them are struggling for relevancy in this day and age. They put on a lot, in my case, they put on a lot of events. I went to the events, a lot of like breakfasts and things like this, where you would attend and you would be there with either business owners or you would be there with more likely salespeople, business development people, salespeople who are representing bigger companies. And you'd all sit and you'd all have like a sort of breakfast for 100 people kind of thing. And you would exchange business cards and it would be people trying to sell to other salespeople. That was kind of my impression of it. And I was only involved for about a year and I stopped going to the meetings after about 3 months. So that was my personal experience. That's anecdotal. I don't know if other people have, like I think you managed to get more value from it, Luke. You got, you took advantage of maybe the different resources perhaps that they had.
Yeah, it's a good point, Bill. And you can't get everything from these groups. Let's not just talk about the Chamber of Commerce because that's one. If there's a Chamber of Commerce, there's going to be all kinds of different groups that will all have a different mandate and that will be able to help you in a different way. I don't think you should ever rely on them. There's nothing better than just going directly to your customers and advisors and going direct. But these groups can be helpful. If you want to talk about the benefits, I joined the Technology Association a few years ago. They had a special rate for small businesses because their pricing was based on revenue or how many employees you had. I can't remember. But in that membership, basically, I got to give a presentation to other members about what our company was doing. And it led us to actually getting some more strategic partnerships. And indirectly, we closed some deals for software projects. We built the free press app, the news app for our city because of a relationship that we had through that group. So, I don't think sometimes if you join these groups, it might be difficult to really do the math and say, I spent this much money and this much time on breakfasts and we got this much in sales. I would not go in with that expectation, but if you're interested to meet new people and learn what you need to learn and know what's available and meet business partners, I think it's worth checking out. For me, being part of one of these groups, attending one of these events, I found my business partner. Spent the next 3 years building a company, life-changing experience. And that wouldn't have happened if I didn't just go to the event. I spent like $20 on a ticket. So it's hard to say the very specific benefit. It depends on the group, but I think it's there, but it's got that it depends right beside it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Someone asked specifically, what's the benefit of joining a chamber of commerce? Well, I agree with you. I mean, you can, if you're trying to discover customers, if you're trying to connect with potential customers, in my experience, the chamber of commerce is not, that's not been the primary value. If you're looking for business partners, if you're looking for, and I'm talking about not individuals, I'm talking about businesses, like you're partnering with different businesses. I think it's a good way to go into a room and have all those people there, and you can talk with them. Not necessarily to get customers. Now, if you're doing a B2B type thing, business to business, where your customers are not the public, your customers are businesses, then I think the Chamber of Commerce may be able to add a bit more value there, because the people that you're going to be in the room with are going to all be potential customers. So in that case, I think it could add that would be the primary benefit. The other benefit, of course, is visibility. In a small sense, you get legitimized a little bit. They publish a directory. You can say I'm a member of the chamber. If you're trying to connect with other businesses, that's a good way to break the ice, a way to have a reason to connect, and the reason for them to talk to you is because you're both in the chamber, and perhaps you had representatives that were both at the same event or something.
I agree completely. If I may jump in for a second, Bill. Yeah, I agree completely about that visibility and credibility. From my experience in mostly B2B businesses, so a business selling a product or service to another business, most of the time these sales did not happen from one touch point, which means I don't send an email to them and they buy. I need to send an email, and then I need to bump into them at the downtown mall. And then I need to have them read my blog post on LinkedIn, and then they need to hear about me from one of their contacts that they trust. And then 6 months or a year later, they bump into me again, and the timing is right, and they feel a bit of trust and recognition, and then they buy something. So I see a benefit of these groups as just being maybe another touch point, another way that people might see you. And I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum because, like, they decided to use a picture of me in their marketing. And I get my friends that go to events of the Chamber of Commerce in the city here, and they're always taking pictures with their iPhones of a picture of me up on the big screen. And it's like, that was totally worth it because, people are seeing me, people are thinking about me. I was lucky to be part of an advertisement where I'm quoted saying something cool for the chamber. So
that's because you're a good-looking guy, Luke. They see you and they want to use you as their poster child, right?
Well, I guess I got it from my mama, but I guess you have to use.
Yeah, they didn't ask me to do that. I could have gained 100 pounds, and I could be their poster child, right? I guess.
But there are all these small little advantages. I'm a people person. That's my approach to sales, is to make friends. So it can be a benefit that way. But when you're building a business, there's nothing better than just to get out there. And I don't know if that means calling your customers, attending the events. The only wrong action is inaction.
Inaction?
The only wrong action is inaction. Did I say that right?
Yeah, I think I got the gist of that. Someone says, where can I find wholesalers or manufacturers? Okay, here's a little tip. This is the starting point for a lot of that stuff. Okay, Mr. Steve Q. If you have Google up in front of you, okay, open up Google. Okay, wherever you are, the name of your city, okay, type that in. So if you're living in New York or whatever, type in New York City, okay? And then go to maps. So you see a big map of New York City, okay? Then at the search box at the top of the screen, type in manufacturers or wholesalers or the name of an industry. If you're say you're in the garment industry selling clothes, right? And you're looking for wholesalers or manufacturers of garments, something like that. Type in manufacturer or type in garment. And what you'll see is on the map, you have all these little dots pop up, pop, right? Those are all those are the locations of the players in that industry, all the businesses. Okay, so if you typed in wholesalers, hopefully it'll show on the map where the wholesalers are. And then you could click on the dots, you could see their name, their contact information, website, address, all that kind of stuff. I mean, this is a very crude way of doing it, but this is a good starting point. If you're looking for what businesses are in a certain industry in your location, this is a great way to start. Okay, and then if you are on LinkedIn, LinkedIn allows you to see inside those businesses. Okay, so if you do the thing I just said and you get a list of all the wholesalers or manufacturers or whatever you're looking for in your area, you know the name of the company, then you go to LinkedIn. And if you've built up a network on LinkedIn just by connecting to people randomly for a couple of months, you type in the name of that company, and then it will show you the individuals in that company, and it will give you the means to connect with them directly. So if you want to connect with several, I don't know, wholesalers in a certain industry, within about 5 minutes, this is how you can find out the names and contact information and connect with all the individuals and all the distributors, or a lot of them, that are near you. Okay, so that's a great way to start. There we go. What are some of the other facets of this? Because this is called How to Start a Business. I mean, we talked about briefly risk. We talked about marketing. You talked about, Luc, some of the resources. Let's finish off the resource thing. Like, apart from chambers of commerce, apart from sources of financing, government financing, what else is there for people looking to start a business? You mentioned meetup groups, right? That was another one.
Yeah, I think meetup groups is a great option because almost like any kind of event that's happening related to your topic should be on some kind of event portal. So I'm used to looking at Meetup, and you can go into completely new cities and go on to Meetup, and you can see the organizations that are hosting the events, and that's how you can get plugged in pretty fast. So I would say Meetup is a very good place to go, and it's like in most markets, you have these organizations that we talked about before. They're providing a few different things other than just events, other than some networking opportunities. There's usually somebody providing low interest debt financing for entrepreneurs. So it could be a bank, it could be a nonprofit organization that works with the government. There could be grant programs. So depending what you're doing, if it's considered, innovative and uses new technology, there's often grants, which usually is not free money. It's like you put up 50% and we'll put up 50%. And there's usually a number of programs. And I think that's one reason why you should identify the people and the places that make entrepreneurship happen in your community. Because even if you don't pay the $820 a year or whatever to the chamber, they will let you know when these things happen. And just to know it, just like you would read the newspaper to know what's happening in local news, you would want to hear what these organizations are saying just to know when there's an opportunity or an event or a service that you should plug into. And to answer what Steve mentioned before about his question and what you were answering, Bill, with a unique approach to finding manufacturers, that's a good question for the chamber. I would call them, schedule an in-person meeting. When I did that, honestly, in a new market I was looking to enter, they sent me a list of manufacturers because they want to help. So just by contacting these groups, you can get a lot of things answered. So I think in every group, it's a bit different, these resources. I think in addition to these organizations, you might want to think about a few of the people that you should meet with too. Like, it's good to meet with a lawyer. That legal meeting should be free for that first one. Make sure and just get half an hour of somebody's time to give you some advice from a legal perspective. Maybe your business has a specific legal component that you want to make sure you don't sell something and the customer gets really angry with you about it, or how to structure your relationship with your business partner. Maybe you want to do a shareholders agreement. Maybe you want to write something on a napkin. You decide. There's no right answer, I think, but to talk to a lawyer, to have that awareness, I think is really good. And do the same thing with an accountant. So I would talk to a lawyer, accountant, and a banker somewhat early days in any startup, which should all be free other than maybe a coffee. And If you want to use their service, you can. Otherwise, knowledge is power. Do you have any other ideas, Bill, about resources, people, or places?
The only other big one that I would recommend looking into are industry associations. So if you're looking for manufacturing specifically, once again, this is what I would do if it was me personally. Go to Google, right? A lot of things start with Google. If you're just starting fresh, go to Google, type in manufacturing association and then your region. So like, if we're in Canada, I'd say Manufacturing Association Canada, and then see what comes up in the first few results. You will get, there'll be probably different types of manufacturing associations, but for those of you who don't know, I'm sure many people know this, but for those who don't, an association is a sort of almost like a meetup group for companies. All the manufacturing companies, they all get together and they trade information. They share what's the latest tools, what's the latest techniques, what's the latest changes to the law that govern our industry. What are some of the trends? Are there hiring trends? Are there, trends in global economic affairs that affect our supply chain? So they're going to be talking to each other, and they're going to be plugged into what's going on with that industry. And that's what the association is for. The association is like a central hub for these businesses connecting to each other and talking with each other. So they put on trade shows, they publish, they used to publish print media like magazines. So you'd have Manufacturing Magazine, right? Manufacturing South Africa, Manufacturing USA, Manufacturing Florida. They would have these different associations that would all have their magazine. You could pick up these magazines and it would be all the latest tools that are coming out for manufacturing, all the latest trends and, software products and things like everything you could ever want to know about manufacturing is all in one place. So what I would do is I'd go to Google, I'd Google, the name of your industry, manufacturing, and your location, and an association. See what comes up. Now, if there is something that comes up that looks like it's an association, I would find their phone number and I would get on the phone to them and say, like, look, I'm just an aspiring, business owner, and I'm thinking of going into manufacturing, but I really am starting from zero. And I'm just wondering if you can help me. I'm trying to figure out what the resources are for manufacturers. There's like, are you guys the central hub? What do you do? Things like that, and just use that as a starting point to figuring out what's around you, and then if you're communicating with an association, then the doors sort of open, and you can get advice and help with everything. But it may be like the Chamber of Commerce in the sense that it would be an annual membership fee usually. So depending on how much it is, it may or may not be worth it, but I would at least check, because that would be a big boon if you could sort of have that resource. You could pick up the phone, you could call the association, or just read their website or their publication if they have a publication like a print media magazine.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's a great idea. Start with Google. Google's a great place to start. What I would suggest from my experience is if you just contact people and you're at the idea stage, that's fine. But if you really want people to take you seriously, you should do something beyond just saying, I have an idea. And I think this is just basic human instinct. If I go to my friends and my family and I say, I have an idea, I've done this 1,000 times to them. They're tired of my ideas. But when I put in a little bit extra effort and I show them a picture of something, I build something in 3 dimensions using a CAD software, I build a prototype of the visual screens of my mobile app idea, or I write a business plan, or maybe what's better than a business plan, this is a whole different topic, is do a lean canvas. Google search for lean canvas. I think it's by Steve Blank. It's like a business plan you can do in half an hour. But you do this, maybe you have a website, maybe you don't, maybe you have an email address, or you still have a Gmail account, whatever it is. If you show that you've done a few things to make this a little bit more real and practical than just I have an idea. People will take you a bit more seriously. And why this is important is these non-profit associations that don't make money and have limited staff, they might spend a little bit more time helping you if they see, wow, this person is prepared, this person wants to find manufacturers, but this is specifically their idea, this is how they're going to take over the world, this is what they did so far. They don't need to see your whole presentation usually, but just to know that you've taken that first step is going to help you find customers, business partners, strategic allies. So I would just suggest taking that first step. Like, I can't believe how many people want to build a mobile app, and they come to me as someone who's had a service company building mobile apps since 2015, and they say, I have an idea. And the first thing I say is write down everything that the app should do, like bullet point style. The app should do this, do that, and draw a picture of the different screens the app should have. And I always advise specific software, like I use ninjamock.com, and it just helps you visualize. And then people know what their idea is, and then they can talk to people much more intelligently without any logical gaps. So I think, putting your first foot forward really helps open up those doors. Do you have any comment to that, Bill? I don't know if you have a comment about the whole business plan topic too.
Yeah, we can get into that. That's kind of a big topic. Someone else says, I don't have a business yet. This is the problem with having a giant microphone right in front of your face. It gets between me and reading these chats. Even though I don't have a business yet, do you think they will help me? Yes, they can help you by answering questions and pointing you in the right direction. And the great thing about association is that if they have a trade show, okay, they have an event that's in your city or near your location, go to the event. All you have to do, you can either just get in and they'll let anyone in, or you need to have a business card with your name and a company logo on it so that they see that you're from a business. I've encountered that before, where they say it's not open to the public. You have to be a member of the industry. And what that meant was you had to show a business card. Now, anybody can get a business card printed up for $15 or, some small amount of money, right? So I've actually done that. I remember 20 years ago or something, I went to CES in Las Vegas and got in just by printing up a, business card. And then next thing you know, I was registered. I was an industry insider. And then you go there and you take, and it's a good idea to have a pile of business cards with you, with your name and your contact information. And what you do is you give these out, right? I mean, and I'm sure most people know this. You give these out and you get cards from other people in exchange. And those are your contacts you're making. So when you go there, you're going to be seeing potential competitors, like other companies in that industry. You're also going to see the big customers are all going to be there. The regulators, the legal people from government that are experts on that industry, that could be great contacts for you to have. Imagine if you could pick up the phone and be able to ask someone who is overseeing that industry in the government. They know all the companies, they know all the changes, they know all the challenges, they know all the places you would go for sources of financing and all that. Like, that would be an incredible resource. So you can meet those people by going to one trade show or one industry event thrown by an association. So yeah, even though you don't have a business, you're not actually in the business yet. Definitely worth checking out. They can totally help you. So something to consider.
Yeah, and I would say the only difference between having a business and not having a business is telling people that you have a business. So
yeah, for appearances, yes.
Nobody cares if you have the paperwork. Nobody cares about a lot of these things. Tell people that you have a new business, you're just starting, and it's in this area, and show them that business card that you bought on the cheap. Don't print it up on your computer printer. I think it's better to
Vistaprint. Vistaprint. Have you used Vistaprint, Luke? Have you seen that?
I have. Yeah, it's a great option, and you don't need to pay a lot. And you get this custom branding, and your notebook that you're taking notes. It has your nice big logo on the top. These little things. Then you just tell people, I have a new business. Maybe you didn't even start building the product, but The only difference between you having a business and not is really what you say. It's the attitude around it. And that's why I like the idea of a startup, because a startup is just trying to figure this stuff out. And it's okay being honest with people about that, because often they can help.
Yeah, I want to. Someone says fake it till you make it. Yeah, that's true to a point. I want to say this. This is called How to Start a Business, and it's interesting because whenever I see these types of podcasts and experts that are, supposed experts that are advising on this, they get into all the nitty-gritty details of law and IP law and all this. It's very confusing for people. I'm going to make it very, very simple for everybody out there who's thinking of starting a business. Don't be overwhelmed by all the minutia, like the websites, the business cards, the IP law, the accounting, the tax implications of having a business, the forms of business, whether it's partnerships or, LLCs or corporations. Don't get overwhelmed with that. That stuff doesn't matter. Don't get overwhelmed by the financing either. Okay. All the financing options. That stuff doesn't matter either. This is a very simple thing. A business is a thing that makes money. To make money, you have to have customers. You have to have customers giving you money. If you can come up with something where someone will pay you money to do something or to provide something, the rest is easy. Okay. A lot of people, I talk to a lot of, wannabe entrepreneurs, and they're just overwhelmed by all the details of this stuff. If you've never been to business school, this is going to be overwhelming. Even if you've been to business school, it's going to be overwhelming. All the minutia. No one knows it all, and no one knows it universally for every region and every industry. It's just not possible. Okay, and I would highly question anyone who claims that they do. It's very, very simple. You have to get people that you don't know to give you money in exchange for something. Now, if you can do that, the rest is not a problem. The rest follows. So the business cards, the websites, the associations, the financing, the resources, everything falls into place if you can solve that one problem. Okay. Now, to solve this problem, you can start today. You can go on social networking. You can pitch an idea. You can say, hey, anybody interested in this? And if you get no response, that tells you something. If you get 50 people responding saying, what's this? Tell me more. Then you're onto something. Okay. So this is something that you can get started on right away. Now what I just said, that I would characterize as the core problem. Okay. That's the only problem that's worthy of all your attention and focus and work. Okay. If you solve that, everything else is easy because money will be coming in, and money means you can afford time and people and resources. Okay. That's the core issue here, is how to do that thing. I don't know, Luc, if you want to speak to that. What's your reaction to that? I know that's sometimes a very unpopular stance that I take with that. I've gotten a lot of negative reaction to that, but what do you think?
Well, you're not going to get a negative reaction over here, Bill, because I was writing it down in quotation marks from Bill Todd, the company's expert, because I think that's the truth right there. Yeah, there's a lot of businesses that have a lot of problems, and it could be shareholder dispute, it could be supply chain issues, it could be operations, it could be honestly anything. But if you have customers that are happy with your product and simply paying, if you want to break it down that simply, everything else is really solvable by throwing talent at it, throwing time at it, throwing resources at it. So yeah, that seems to be the number one thing to solve. I would just suggest that, yeah, I totally agree. When you're trying to see if an idea is good, if you send out a message and nobody says anything, it's not the best sign. If you put out a message or a vibe and you get a lot of positive responses, it's probably a great thing. I would just suggest that sometimes won't be the 100% gospel truth. Like sometimes you'll put something out and people will seemingly love it until you put a price tag up. Or people will say that it sucks, but it's because you're not actually talking to the right people. So I think at some point we need to think, who are we talking to? If you talk to your friends and your family and they say your idea is great or it sucks, it actually doesn't matter until you talk to the users and the customers of the product. And you don't know who the users and customers are because you're just starting. So even if you go out there and you talk to 10 and they all say it sucks, you shouldn't be discouraged yet because they might not be the right 10. So I think to a certain extent, yeah, you have to be rational and think, well, why is nobody liking this idea? But at the same time, make sure you put in enough hustle, effort, and energy to get to the point where the right people are giving you the right opinion.
You said so many great things there. Like, there's so many things I'd like to respond. I think the first thing you said was a lot of companies, they're distracted. I think you talk about shareholder disputes and that's what you see all the time. You see a lot of businesses, they are completely distracted by topics and issues like that. They're worried about, shareholder disputes. They're worried about, different hiring policies. They're wondering about, different PR related stuff. And they are not focusing on the central thing, which they should be focusing on, which is serving their customers, listening to what their customers have to say. You don't get any feedback from your customers, but you're still making sales. So a lot of companies just tune out. And it's like, no, you should be saying, like, look, going up to your customers, the general managers, the owners of those businesses should be talking to their customers and saying, how's everything going? Like what was your experience like? What, in terms of like, where do we rank as opposed to our competitors in your mind? What could we be doing different or doing better that you would like to see? Would you like this idea? How do you respond to this? These are the kinds of things they should be doing. And then they should be trying to satisfy and serve those people. That should have like 95% of their attention. And what we see is that's not the case. We see a lot of companies distracted. They're implementing IT systems. They're doing all kinds of other things that don't revolve directly around their customers. And then, whoops, now they're in financial trouble. And no one saw that coming. This is what we see all the time. So another thing you mentioned, Luc, was that, you're talking to different people. Maybe you're talking to the wrong people. You can get people's opinion on financing, on, advice for what you should do. You could write business plans. You could do all kinds of different things. That's not the central thing. The central thing is for you communicating with customers. Imagine if you knew all your customers. You knew exactly what they wanted, exactly how they thought, exactly how much money they'd have to spend. If you had full and complete information, this would not be a challenge. I've said that before. So what you need to do is you need to go out, you need to find your customers, you need to talk to them. That means you need to get out in front of people in some way, shape, or form. If you're an extrovert, you can do this in person. If you're an introvert, you can do it on social networking. But get out and pitch things and learn about people and see what sticks and what doesn't. And you can do this without spending really any money first. You can go out and get this kind of thing. And that's what's going to lead to success, is having that connection with customers, knowing who they are, knowing how to reach them, knowing what to say, okay, or what to write in a post, right? If it comes down to that. So that's something that I think everyone should put first. And I've met and I've tried to help a lot of entrepreneurs that have not done that. They've spent, nearly $200,000 on websites before talking to a single customer, and then they find that nobody goes to their website. That's really the primacy of marketing. And I'm an operations guy. I'm not a salesperson. I did not come up through sales or marketing. I came up through operations. I have an engineering degree, and I have learned over 25 years that the primacy of a business is marketing, and that's where you need to start, and that's the be all end all. There you go. There's my rant for today.
It was a great one.
Awesome. Well, listen, we've been going over an hour. We said last time that we were going to try and wrap it up after an hour. Do you have any just to try and start to ramp this down there, Luc, do you have any kind of parting words or reaction to anything?
I think we covered some good stuff here. No real parting words other than just to, I guess, emphasize that kind of these there's always that tipping point in every startup idea where it starts to go from idea to this is actually a thing. And it could be from finding the right person. It could be from getting that first customer. It could be from finding an advisor. And I know we talked about this on the previous podcast about, how to find your first customer. We were more focused on, and one thing we talked about was, well, sometimes it helps just start by asking for advice. Go on LinkedIn, ask for advice. And that can be a tipping point too when you find the right champion who can tell you the right things, the right places to go, the right manufacturers, the right competitors. You talk about perfect information, and I think that's the best thing. How do you get perfect information? What would it be like? I think that entrepreneurs should just get out there and, you need to do things in order to see what this is. You need to send LinkedIn messages in order to see what comes back. You need to go to the Chamber of Commerce to see what comes back. You need to find these industry associations to see what comes back. And for me, I decided to subscribe to the news of our local entrepreneurship group here in Canada. And they told me about an event that was coming up, and it was what's called a startup weekend, where it's a 55-hour, basically a working job interview where you try to build a business over a weekend with a few strangers. And I did that, and at the end of it, one of the people on my team liked how I worked. They got a sample of who I am. I got a taste of who they are. And he said, "Hey, I want to start a new company. And do you want to be a part of it?" And that's how it happened there, is just from just getting out. We pitched a totally different idea, which never went anywhere. But I just met people that think the same way that I do. And from a startup weekend, we built a software company thereafter. And that company leads to more opportunities. And it just comes from getting out there. So I like to be introverted and sit at home too. I think you classify yourself as an introvert too, Bill.
Yes.
But one way or another, we need to create action to see something back. So if people have an idea, draw it up, make a picture, write some notes on a page, talk to some people. Worst thing that can happen is it won't go anywhere. And but you can really test that out, and you make a lot of progress for very cheap.
Yeah, that's great. That's great thoughts. And I think that would be a good topic for another live stream, because that's a big topic. Is I have felt that conflict, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. And there are a lot of resources, like you mentioned, and that you described with the startup weekend, where it's essentially a very extroverted type thing. You're there to connect. You're there to work with other people, things like that. That's a very extroverted type activity. Yeah. And it's interesting because there are certain entrepreneurs, especially the more technical entrepreneurs, that are not like that. They're introverts. They get into startups to do what they want and not necessarily make decisions by committee and, try and please other people. They have a vision of what they want to do. They believe this is what the world needs, and they're going to do it. Even if, they don't have support from their immediate friends and family, they feel like they're on a mission. So you get a sort of conflicting a thing, where you have very extroverted type resources that want to make you, it's almost like you're going back to school in a way, and you have to be a part of a group. But by definition, I found that that's kind of at odds with the whole idea of being an entrepreneur, which is you go out on your own, right? So that would be a great topic to really see how you can reconcile those two, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. Where do you draw the line between getting help and, doing your own thing, right? So I think that might be a great topic for another live stream in the future. But I want to thank everybody who participated in the chat. It's great that we got such good participation. It's great that I think Luc and I can see that and respond to that. I know there's a little bit of a lag, but that's not the end of the world. So once again, I'm going to do a plug for Luc here. Luc, if they want to find out more, you have some resources for them of your own. I understand, right? Do you want to share some of that?
Sure. Yeah, I'll say a quick plug. One, I would suggest this to anybody, but if people Google your name, make sure there's something that shows up on the other side and that you're aware what that is too.
Something good,
so,
yeah.
Yeah, I'm not too full of myself, but I do Google myself from time to time, and I know what's there, I think. And, it's very easy for people to find me. I could say what my email address is here, but I think people should very easily be able to find me just from how searchable my name is. And I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, just like yourself, Bill. So I encourage people to reach out, and a lot inspired by our great chats we've had together. I've been working on many different businesses, and I would say I've dealt with the problem of finding the first customer roughly 10 times in my startup career so far. And I agree with you. I think it's the biggest challenge, and that's why actually starting a brand this week, I'm starting something called the First Customer Club. And that's specifically for those that want advice and they want to hear stories from those who have done it. The inspiration meets the education on how to find your first customer, and have some fun with that topic. And I know you and I, Bill, will continue to dance around that subject too, because if you figure that out, everything else slips into place. So,
it's a big topic,
stay tuned. Yeah, stay tuned with what I'm up to. LinkedIn's a great place to follow, and First Customer Club coming soon. More collabs with the company's expert for sure. So thanks for having me on.
Perfect. Yeah, it's my pleasure. And just a final plug for me. So this is my YouTube channel. This is my secondary YouTube channel called The Company's Expert Live. Please make sure you go and check out my real YouTube channel, my primary YouTube channel called The Company's Expert. It is linked to this channel through YouTube. So if you go to my channel, you see feature channels, and that's a direct link. Where we cover some of this material too, but not in live stream format. So thanks, everybody. It was great to see everyone out, and hope to see you on the next one. Thanks, Luke. Yeah.
Thanks, Bill.
You
Thanks,
take
everybody.
care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Over and out.